So, you just heard REM's The End of the World as We Know It. I know what you're thinking. What does that have to do with the fact that it's the 15th anniversary of my wedding? Well, that song was played right after my wife and I got married, because that's the type of crazy people we are. We never thought we'd get married, so it's the end of the world as we know it. Before that was Soldier Leaf, who played at our wedding with one of my wife's favorite songs, a song called The Wheel, and John Caspi kicked off the set with Marry Me. And that was our little set for our wedding day 15 years ago today at the Stone Pony. But now, on the phone with me, completely different topic as we change topics, often do here on Stay Home with Lazlo. We've got Rob Lives on the line. How are you doing today, Rob?
Well, how are you, Mr. Lazlo?
Oh, Mr. Lazlo, so formal. I am doing well because I get to hang out with you and talk to you, and you've been in a million bands, it looks like, so there's probably a lot to talk about.
But yeah, I've done a couple things here and there. I like to keep it interesting, but I also like to be a bit of a rerun. I can't just speed bump over the fact that your anniversary like that. I immediately would like to congratulate you and the missus on that. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
I remember in selecting this day, I told you I choose the new moon because of the power and all that stuff that I think follows all of that, and what a powerful day I chose.
Yeah, I wasn't going to tell you. I'm like, gee, you actually picked my wedding anniversary.
Yeah.
But my wife's really like, hey, do your show, because not like we can go anywhere for our anniversary because of the shit going on in the world right now. And by the way, we're internet radio, so feel free to curse.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm a former Marine, so it's hard to not curse. I'm programmed this way, so I'm glad I have some freedom with that. But yeah, amazing. That's great. That you just took it on the chin. You didn't mention it at all, and you're like, okay, I'll talk to you then.
Yeah, because it's like I went to my wife. I'm like, do you want me to? Because I've done this show every day. Except the 2 days that I had a music festival, 3 days I had a music festival going on, and Monday will be the next time that we're preempted because we're doing a virtual music festival. Otherwise, I've done, I think, your interview like 55 or 56 in a row.
Right, yeah. I've been checking quite a bunch of them out, and it's amazing your consistency, so well done on being, like I mentioned before, on being a lighthouse for...
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, well, I just wanted to thank you for that. I mean, you're being like a lighthouse, like I had mentioned before, for all these bands that wouldn't otherwise get play, and for being there when no one else is able to. There's no shows, so now you are the show.
I'm not the only one doing this. I'm not trying to act like I'm the only one out there, but thank you. When this whole thing started... There's
plenty of people playing top 40, and we need you.
Well, yeah, there's a lot doing that. But there are other people on the Internet and other podcasts that are spotlighting local music also, and spotlighting what some people would call unpopular music simply because, people don't know about it.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I did the commercial radio thing back in the 90s, and I tried to convince the commercial radio station to play more New Jersey bands and unknown bands, and they didn't think people wanted to hear it. So I said, fine, I'll do it myself. And they were right. I don't have the same size audience that I did at the commercial station, but that's okay.
You have the listeners that matter.
Exactly. I'd rather play for a smaller audience and play the music I want to play than sit there and have to play bands like Creed over and over again, which I did at that commercial radio station.
Right. And I'm sure that was just fine for all the people, the patrons at the bar who were drinking while that song was being played.
Yeah, look, there's an audience for Creed. I'm not it.
Yeah, I don't believe I am either, but, I guess he had some great vocals, though. I have to say, that guy had a nice voice.
I didn't particularly care for it, but then again...
Wasn't it like the Vedder replication, right?
I think that's what bothered me, was that when their first single came out, which I think was called My Own Prison, people kept calling up the radio station and saying, hey, could you play that new Pearl Jam song? And I'm like, Pearl Jam hasn't put out an album in a year and a half. I think you're thinking of Creed.
Exactly. Yeah, well, he had me fooled for a good long time.
Apparently many people.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you've made, and I mentioned at the beginning, you've been in a bunch of different bands, and it seems like you change up your sound depending on which band you're in. Because I've heard some stuff that's, more hard, some stuff that's more rockabilly. Your new stuff, I don't even know how to describe the Rob Live stuff. How would you describe it?
Well, I would suppose it could be coined as doomabilly or desert confusion country. I don't know. There's a little industrial in there. I don't know. It's just kind of a mixture of the things I've been doing or the places I've lived, and it just turns out to be strange.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Now, if I understand correctly, you grew up in New Jersey and you're back here now, but it looks like you've lived in several different parts of the country over the last however many years. What brought you back to New Jersey?
Well, sometimes you have to return to your origin, I wanted to see what was going on out here. Families out here, hadn't seen them in quite some time because, as you mentioned, I was, around the country quite a bit. I was stationed basically as a domicile in Arizona with a few bands out there, and I was just kind of out in that area doing the California, the Vegas kind of that market, and it just felt like a good time to come on back here to New Jersey, see what was going on, get in touch with my origins, and see how the West changed my East Coast, and see what that kind of a beast makes, in trying to mix the two, because there's such a dramatic difference in the styles and the bands and the looks and everything from one coast to another that you would think it's a different country.
Does it really feel that way? Because I find, and I don't travel much these days, not as much as I did when I was younger, but that most of America seems pretty much the same at this point. Wherever you go, there's the same, McDonald's and a million at Starbucks and all the other stores. And other than a few regional things, everything seems so much homogenized around the country now, which is funny because we're such a diverse country in terms of, left wing, right wing at the moment.
Yeah, well, maybe because I never really amounted to much monetary success, I played the smaller clubs when I went throughout the country. I saw these pockets of very diverse music or very super concentrated music in different areas of the country or on native reservations where music you would not expect was huge. In fact, in me going into the Billy aspect of things, in rockabilly or psychobilly primarily, it was not my intent. I had left Project Sads that you'd supported back in 2004 through 2007 to go to Arizona and form a band there with the intent of more of a horror punk sort of a vibe. And an upright bass player replied to my ad and said, "Have you ever thought of having one of these to your songs?" And I said, "Well, no, let's go. Try it." And it really began to an offshoot of two bands that wound up being into the psychobilly and horror punk mix. And then I just started to get weird and I had thrash and black metal in there for good measure.
So then it sort of organically changed, and it wasn't even that you were trying to get that sound. It just sort of went that way as band members joined and things just sort of changed naturally.
Exactly. I like to think that I'm writing the same song because I'm the same person. This is just kind of what I'm doing. The sound, I think, is really influential on the bands, the band members I pick up, the instruments that they just happen to have. I don't really go into anything with this instrument in mind. It's just, who do I have around me? Who's willing to do this? All right, here's what we can do with these things. And then I just add my tinge of darkness on everything because that's just my approach.
So now for the newer stuff, the Rob Live stuff, is that all you, or do you have band members working with you on that?
No, that's all me, including the really questionable engineering process. That's from start to finish.
I wouldn't say it's questionable. I don't think there's anything wrong with the engineering.
I appreciate that. I just recognize that people go to years of school to do that, and I didn't. So
yeah, but
I really appreciate the compliment.
I think that's kind of the great equalizer of the last 20, 25 years is home computers and recording software has gotten better and cheaper. Is that with a little practice, pretty much anybody can do it. I remember, gosh, I guess I'm thinking 15 years ago now, there was a kid in New Jersey who was still in high school who put out an album that was one of the best produced albums I had heard, and he did the whole thing on his own in his bedroom.
Oh, it's amazing.
Like multiple instruments.
Exactly, yeah. My problem is that I am an old man, so I think the younger you are, you're almost born with these applications and interfaces, and you're ready to go. I'm literally using a Korg D12 recorder, and I'm dumping it into Audacity into one track. And I barely even know what that means because I'm really just trying to focus on the music.
Look, I hear you because, I'm talking to you right now on a landline, and I get laughed at for that all the time because who's got a landline anymore? Well, we do because it runs into our mixing board, which runs into our computer in order to actually broadcast this right now.
Wow.
It's the only way I know to do it.
Soon enough, we'll be back on the CB radio.
I'd be okay with that. I miss the CB radio.
Breaker 19.
I've got to imagine there are people out there, possibly truckers, still using the CB radio.
I would imagine people are buying them up nowadays. It might see a resurgence. It's out there. It's a viable option.
I mean, it really was the lo-fi version of Zoom and Skype of 30 years ago, 20 years ago, before any of those things existed.
Yeah, I mean, not even that long ago. In living in Arizona or going through questionable, very high elevation points of the country, having one in the van or truck that you're in helped. If you get a flat out there and you can't reach the park services or whoever's up at that level, then you are on your own. So they're still pretty viable in a bunch of the country right now.
Oh, yeah, I got to imagine that there are a lot of spots that are dead zones for cell phones unless you've got one of those, special satellite phones.
Absolutely. So with what I wanted to talk about, what I kind of saw as another elephant in the room right now is moving to Spotify seeming to happen amongst some really big names in the audio industry, like Joe Rogan, not to drop mainstream names like that, but he's one of them that seems to be leaving YouTube as an avenue as an artist because of the way that they seem to be locking down on just simple opinions.
Well, I think Spotify, and I don't know a lot, but I did see a story that Joe Rogan's moving to Spotify, but I think he's getting paid to move to Spotify, and that's why he's doing it.
Absolutely, $100 million he got to go to that and drop YouTube.
For $100 million, I think most of us would jump ship.
Right, absolutely. But I didn't really understand how big Spotify was because, like I said, I'm an old school guy. I kind of don't really even promote or do social media with any of my projects. So it's, kicking yourself in your own rear, but it's just the way I do it. It seems like I wanted to do something now with all of this happening that actually has some distribution. So I put the new Rob Liz material on Spotify recently before this happened. And already just seeing the major difference in traffic as opposed to YouTube, which is sincerely ground to a halt as far as traffic plays I've seen, at least on my personal sites here.
Yeah, I think YouTube now you've got to have something very visual. That just putting up one piece of art, a still piece of artwork in the song, doesn't seem to go as well for get as many hits. As
Lazlo, what's killing me is...
What's that?
I'm sorry. What's killing me is a friend of mine told me that he got his channel monetized by having the faucet run while his kitten was just batting at the water stream. That was enough. Just running that live got him monetized.
I believe that, because anything with a cat, people will watch.
Yeah, except for a cat sitting with me.
Okay, I guess not.
Yeah, I should try it one of these times. I was thinking about it. Just here's a video on the Rob Liz channel of just him and his orange cat, Soleil, sitting there, staring back at you.
Yeah, you can put one of your songs over it and do it. I guarantee you, if you push it, tag it with the cat stuff, people will wind up gravitating towards it. It may not be as huge as, cat with a water faucet, but you'll get something. People like cats.
Rob Lives is the cat's meow. I see the title now, right?
There you go.
Boom, sensation.
Look, I mean, it's kind of weird, but that's the silly shit that winds up, having to be done if you're willing to do it to promote yourself. If you're willing to do something silly on YouTube or on things, people will get to notice you. It may not be the way you want them to, because it may not be for your music, but
yeah, it definitely seems easier to be known for things other than your music.
Yeah, I mean, look at how many people who are celebrities today just because they've got a reality show.
That's true.
I mean, I don't watch any of that shit. It's not for me, but I hear the names now, and I'm like, who the hell are these people? Oh, they're from the Real Housewives of whatever. Fine, whatever.
What's really interesting is how, in multiple facets of the government, on every side, that being a celebrity on television is almost a springboard to becoming a politician now.
Well, politicians have become celebrities, and I try not to get too political on this show, but you notice, before all the 24-hour news cycles, you didn't see the politicians grandstanding quite so much as you do in the last 25, 30 years since, CNN and Fox News and MSN and all the other different 24-hour news services cropped up.
It's certainly there. You see a lot more of it, and it seems to be that we have equal coverage of almost 25 presidents at this time, and so it's definitely confusing, and there's a lot of information to try to sort through. So hopefully, I don't like to get political either, and it's hard to say that anymore because they're almost making us or dragging us all into being political, but.
Oh, it does. I wind up venting sometimes. I know you're not a social media person, but every so often something will just irritate me so much that the one social media I'm on, Twitter, I'll just post something and be like, oh, come on, this is getting ridiculous. We don't need, people acting this stupid or saying this stupid partisan shit.
It is, and both sides are guilty of going a little too far, and everyone does have their own statistics and their own doctors and their own proof on both sides. All I can really say is you, I, everyone else around you, we only know what we're told, and that really the best thing to do is just watch as much live coverage as you can. And then, take some extra time and watch both sides, watch some media from both sides, and determine who told you clearly what happened there and then who didn't. And then you'll easily be able to reveal who's telling you the truth and who's not. And then you get to make your own decision.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think some people aren't necessarily the types that are going to do that, or people already have their mind set up based on their beliefs. And that's part of the problem, in my opinion. If we're, again, I don't want to get too bogged down in this, but what's going on right now with COVID shouldn't be a political issue. People are dying. The virus doesn't care what side of the political spectrum you're on. 93,000, I think we're up to now, people in America have died. Let's just try and be safe. Now, you can argue over what being safe is, but clearly just running out into the streets and coughing on people is not safe.
No, and nor was it ever. And that's why we had flu numbers so similarly, almost every year. It's just we are on such a heightened way of being, and it's almost the way they both sides want us, because they're competing for our attention. And we can't be heightened all the time. We can't be on red alert. You know, if we're supposed to be on red alert, then that means we're supposed to be paying immediate attention to everything around us and being ultra sensitive. Well, you can't live that way 24 hours a day for what was supposed to be 2 weeks, and now it's just months on end with no end. You know, it's a hard message for people to understand. Be on heightened alert, but sit around and watch Netflix.
Well, that's why I'm doing all this stuff, so that I'm not just sitting around watching Netflix. I've watched less Netflix than I ever thought I would. I feel like it's almost a waste that I'm spending money on Netflix for how little I've watched it.
There's not much I watch on it, unless it's there's a really good one I liked watching that was something about the outdoors, Win the Outdoors. It's I believe a UK-based show where they send some contestants to Canada to just thrive and survive. So that's something I can get into these days.
I have not seen that. I know I watched a Patton Oswalt comedy special this week that went up there that was very funny, if you're into Patton Oswalt.
I very much am. I just saw him. He's a pretty funny guy. I'm glad he's getting out there.
So I think that's the only thing I've watched in the last... No, I'm sorry. I watched a quote-unquote documentary on psychedelics that were a bunch of comedians talking about having taken psychedelics and the bad trips and good trips they had been on as a result of it. That's
like
two things that I watched on Netflix.
You know, I've always been intrigued by the stories of ayahuasca or things like that. I've not been able to partake. I think the furthest down that hole I've gone down is absinthe. That was probably the thing that hit me the most was absinthe. I was immediately immortal.
How did that go for you?
It went fine for me, but the walls around me were questionable. I redecorated.
So you managed not to injure yourself, but you kind of injured the walls around you.
Superpowers, I'm telling you. It's not good stuff unless you mean it.
Wow.
Yeah, superpowers.
Yeah, I have never partaken of drugs. The only one that I would have was pot, but I had childhood asthma, so I never really wanted to smoke because I was afraid of what it would do to my asthma.
Absolutely. Well, I'll have to send you an anniversary cookie then. It'll get around both points, and you'll be absolutely smiling.
Postal Service, don't look in my mail.
Right. Scratched out my return address. It just says Rob lives.
We'll just wait another year or so. It'll eventually be legal here in New Jersey. It's inevitable.
Yeah, I think it's about to pass Congress right now in that hefty new bill.
They keep saying, they've said it for, since Christie left office, because he was dead set against it. So since Christie left office, they kept saying it, but I don't think it's going to happen until after, COVID things settle down, because rightfully so, they should be worrying more about that right now and making sure we've got everything we need so that things don't get worse.
Yes, and I think that would be really helpful for out here. I often feel like I've gone back in time. I was in Arizona when it was legal, and it was great. What I saw as far as crime going down, especially domestic abuse going down. No one really smokes a bowl and goes crazy. They kind of sit around, or they just write, or they do something kind of creative. So,
and I know you or you were a Marine, so I don't know if you had to serve anywhere where you got PTSD, but I know they've statistically proven how it can help with PTSD.
It absolutely does. It helps with PTSD, epilepsy, glaucoma. Obviously, that's the one everyone laughs about. But a lot of things, muscle pains, tremors, or just the ability to sleep, or the ability to get hungry again. So for people to have access to that, it's really important. Since, especially here in New Jersey, we're considering, liquor stores and cigarette shops to be essential. I think we could keep that going and actually get that, because I don't know how it's been, but I think statistically it's been really bad as far as domestic violence and just the police having to run to people's homes, because now everyone's locked down with alcohol and they're sorting their issues out for the first time.
Yeah. There's on a national scale, they've said that there's been a spike in domestic abuse, and it's probably even worse than just ones we know about, because a lot goes unreported.
I feel bad. I was trying to be lighthearted because the only news you see is COVID, and I wanted to just be lighthearted and look at something else. So I was looking at a channel, and instead of something lighthearted, this guy is on there with a long beard spilling his guts that his wife has left him, and he's alone in his house. And I was like, oh my God, that's not what this channel's about. So it's definitely affecting people that you would never otherwise think. So definitely, try to reach out to people and make sure they're doing all right. They may be putting on a smiling face for you, but there's definitely people out there that could use hearing from somebody.
Yeah, no, that is an important thing to say, and I wish I had more time to reach out to more people on a daily basis, because there's so many musicians who I've gotten to know over the years, and I try and keep in touch with as many as I can, but I'm doing so much with the station that it keeps me from reaching out to as many as I'd like to. I wish there were more hours in a day.
That's for sure, but every word you say right now is reaching them, so I think you're doing well.
Well, thank you. I'm trying to do my little part, and I do know it's just a little part in a big world, but if we all do a little part, then it becomes something bigger, right?
Absolutely, and that's kind of my focus on getting the Rob Lives out there and being on Spotify or iTunes or Bandcamp primarily, because they actually give you what you earn most. But
85%, except those rare days where they're actually willing to give you 100%. But I do that.
But like in doing that, the motivation of wanting to do this, it really stems from having to put it out there, having all this time to think. I've been lucky enough to be working, but I'm working on a VPN laptop chained to with an invisible chain to my desk. It's very strange, but just to put it out there, just to get your sounds out there, I think is important for people to finish their thoughts. Because if one person hears it and can identify with it, then it was really important that it was out there in the first place.
Well, that is true, and I'm sure, even if, like you said, your songs aren't getting as much traction on YouTube as you'd like, but if it's reaching a few people and, making their day a little bit better, that's something positive.
There's absolutely been other avenues that have been much better than that, and I'm sort of glad for the shift, and I've almost debated leaving the YouTube platform myself, because I've experienced some demonetization things. And I'm not sure. It's not like there's no explanations. They just, you get an email, someone claims a monetization on something, and you don't necessarily understand why.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that it's a problem, but I put like 3 videos on YouTube ever, 3 or 4 I think are up there, and haven't put one up on YouTube in at least 5 years. So I don't. And none of them were monetized, so I don't really think, get no details about that.
Well, I and a lot of other musicians have nothing to lose in the fact that in order to even be monetized, you need to have a large amount of subscribers. I'm not sure what it is. I think it's like 100,000 or something wacky. I'm nowhere near even seeing that from the scope on that. So for me to leave the platform doesn't really matter, because everything I do get goes right in their pocket in the first place. Not that It's about money, but it's the theory of they won't allow me or promote me to get to the point of that subscribership with, they won't pay me until I hit this almost a nut, you would call it, of 100,000 subscribers. So a lot of people aren't getting anything for what they're paid, and they are signing, a lot of people can reach their music from there, and it's not really fair. So I see Spotify as a real viable option for people to protect their music, but also get it out there to the same amount of people, if not more now.
Unfortunately, you don't make a lot of money, or at least my understanding is you don't make a lot of money off of Spotify, even if you get hundreds of thousands of plays.
No, I see it as more of an anchor. You know, I found it. You know, a lot of people told me about it. I'm lost. I'm old. As far as, you know, I like records. I put out a record last year with one of my bands. I value that. But everything I was hearing, I just started asking people, where do you find your music? You know, the younger generations. And it's time and time again, I'm hearing Spotify. So I'm like, all right, it's time to address this, because it's obviously something. I'm tired of changing platforms. I mean, you know, it was MySpace, it was Facebook, it was MP3.com, it was Napster, it was
ReverbNation.
My God, it's, you know, how many times do we have to do this?
But that's
you know, I know I'm getting sick of it.
5-10 years from now, Spotify will still be around. It just won't be hip anymore. And there'll be some new one, you know, whatever it's going to be called, and that'll be the one that everybody's going to want to jump to.
Yeah. So you can chase those things, or you can just write your music. I tried to choose both this time for the first time in a while. I ended up using a distribution company to do all that junk for me, so I could just sit here and write the songs. Done. You know, I really just want to focus on my weird sound and carve out a niche that's my own, use that as an anchor, and if it leads anyone to me, to my sites that feels the need to grace me with their money for my strange sounds, feel free. If not, cool. At least you listened. Maybe I took you somewhere that you've never been before. So that's really all I'm trying to do. Trying to either bring you somewhere you've never been, in the middle of space, or to the heart of the desert.
So are you working on a lot of new music right now?
I am. I'm working on a single and a cover this weekend, and I was actually just presented an album offer from a friend of mine, Colin. He has 7 songs down that's in the vein of a horror punk, thrashish kind of a... There's a lot of things involved in it. It's really cool music. It's very individual, and he asked me to do vocals and write the lyrics. And I spent the last few days with it, and I can hear all sorts of things vocally. So I committed to do that record with him. So that should also be out shortly. But the project isn't even named right now. And then I'm also, if you consider playing live anymore, I play live in Sometimes the Devil as the guitarist and vocalist, and I play bass with the Aristocats.
Yeah, you seem to be in a lot of different projects. I don't know. I guess those are still active, but some of the other ones might not be. Because, like,
correct.
Looking at your SoundCloud page, I think you've got like a dozen acts listed.
Yes. Some of them are from Arizona. They've never disbanded but aren't active. And like that, from different parts of the country. Or I address black metal, raw black metal. So that's usually projects done that aren't performed live. So we have a few records out that don't have shows behind them. We don't tour them. They're recording projects, and they're to really capture a feeling. So, yeah, there's a lot of projects that are kind of satellited about, unrelated. They're kind of done not to draw fans of one to the other. So that's kind of why I keep it separated and change the name out of respect for members, you know, to play the same songs just because I wrote them with different people seems disingenuous. So I like to just have those separate projects and visit them accordingly.
And is it that you're, you know, at various times you feel more like, oh, I feel like writing this darker stuff now, and now I feel like writing this, you know, more, you know, weird, moody stuff now? I mean, is it that, you know, at various points in times, different styles take to you?
I'll tell you, I had to change my style throughout the years as far as I learned to try to float in the water. That's kind of what I'm doing. I remember going in with a band, and we're this kind of band, and trying to almost force the creativity in that direction. Whereas now, I choose. I'm really enjoying putting out singles right now under the Rob Lives title because I can just choose. There really isn't a direction. What I hear, what I feel, sometimes I'll just start humming something and hopefully it doesn't exist. I'll just be strumming the guitar. So the less I try, the more I hear. I just sort of just try to hear it, and that determines my sound. And then once I record, it changes more because you just start to build these layers, especially as a solo artist. I'm hearing a riff, or I write a song around just a chorus, a vocal pattern that I hear. So it can change, and it's just sort of building puzzles right now as far as that. Building puzzles, but just in the flow of the water, just rolling your hand over the puzzle and letting the piece slip in to the right spot instead of just trying to cram it in there. Nope, not that spot. Nope, not that spot.
Wow, you say that so poetically. It's almost like song lyrics right there. I love it.
I appreciate that. I hope to have the heart of a poet, honestly.
Well, we've got to wrap things up because I'm going to play Sterile Skies. So do you want to talk about that song before I play it?
Sure. In letting go of some of the more upfront Billy styles, kind of wanted to address new ways. And a good buddy of mine from Sometimes the Devil, Pete, had this just drilling bass line that I just couldn't get over. So I just said, keep playing it, and I wrote this song around it. And it was the beginning of the lockdown, where everything seemed dead, where everyone was still afraid to leave, and no one knew what was going on, and you're just kind of looking out the window, and it seemed rainy for days and days. So I'm trying to send some positivity to everybody, but it encompasses that feeling, this particular song.
Well, thank you so much for calling in today, Rob. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Rob Lives. Here is Sterile Skies here on Stay Home with Lazlo.